Hi, this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I run through the current version of my Sunday sermon. 1980, Bruce Springsteen came out on his album The River, a song, Everybody Has a Hungry Heart, which, as Billboard magazine said, was a tremendously memorable hook. I cannot hear this line without having the music go off in my head. The rest of the lyrics are not so memorable. In fact, they're a little depressing. I got a wife and kid in Baltimore, Jack. I went out for a ride and never went back. Like a river that don't know where it's flowing, I took a wrong turn and I just kept going. Wow. Left a wife and kids and abandoned them. Why? Everybody has a hungry heart. Everybody has a hungry heart. Lay down your money and you play your part. Everybody's got a hungry heart. I met her in a Kingstown bar. We fell in love. I knew it had to end. We took what we had and we ripped it apart. And now I'm down in Kingstown again. I wonder if the mayor of Kingstown took that from this. Everybody needs a place to rest. Everybody wants to have a home. Don't make no difference what nobody says. It ain't nobody like to be alone. Everybody has a hungry heart. Now, this is actually taken from Tennyson's poem Ulysses, which Ulysses is sort of the Latin version of Odysseus from Homer's Odyssey. And you all know the story. He comes back from the Trojan War and he has to win his way back into the home. But the poem begins when he's now set up as king. At his return to his kingdom, Ithaca, having made the long journey home after fighting in the Trojan War, confronted again by domestic life, Ulysses expresses his lack of contentment. This isn't far from Bruce Springsteen or the lyrics of the song, including the indifference towards savage race whom he governs, his own people. Ulysses contrasts his present restlessness with his heroic past and contemplates his old age and eventual death. In other words, while he's trying to get back home, he's got a singular purpose, and now that he's settled, stable, and secure, he longs for the uncertainty. Everybody's got a hungry heart. Now, this immediately makes me think of the line from the book of Ecclesiastes, God has placed eternity in our hearts. What on earth does that line mean? It seems to be a void, an ache, something that this world simply can't satisfy, and it makes us all restless. Humanity is endlessly restless. We live in the most broadly secure, comfortable, affluent society the world has ever seen, yet people are dissatisfied, anxious, and suffering all over the place. It seems the wealthier we are, the more secure we are, the more anxious we are, the more depressed we are, the more dissatisfied we are. What's with that? When death is stalking us, we're anxious to live. When death doesn't seem to be stalking us, we're chasing something else. We're never satisfied for long, even when we catch it. C.S. Lewis puts his finger on this in his book, Mere Christianity. The longings which arise in us when we first fall in love, or first think of some foreign country, or first take up some subject that excites us, are longings which no marriage, no travel, no learning can really satisfy. I am not now speaking of what would be ordinarily called unsuccessful marriages or holidays or learned careers. I am speaking about the best possible ones. There was something we grasp at that first moment of longing, which just fades away in the reality. I think everyone knows what I mean. The wife may be a good wife, the hotels and scenery may have been excellent, the chemistry and chemistry may be a very interesting job, but something has evaded us. Everybody has a hungry heart, and we know, even when we've gotten everything that we've asked for, it isn't enough. Now, the Bible is really the story of the quest for a spiritual home. In the book of Genesis, even in a perfect garden, the hearts of the man and the woman are restless, and they fall victim to temptation. Abraham and the patriarchs wanted a home, a land of rest, and they could never seem to get there. The children of Israel are in captivity in Egypt, and they left bondage looking for the promised land, But when they get to the border, they're too scared to go in. And so another 40 years in the desert for a generation to die out. Even Moses doesn't get into the promised land. In Joshua and Judges, the people are in the land, but keep falling into bondage to their own appetites and to their neighbors. In Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles, David, the king, delivers them from the Philistines. But even as a man after God's own heart, he is a flawed king, a flawed father, disqualified from building God's house of rest in Jerusalem. The prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and all of them, a remnant will return from exile and resettle the land, but none of the hopes of what the prophets seem to give were realized. When we come to the time of the Gospels, some of Israel remains in her ancestral home. Far, far more are flung throughout the Roman Empire looking for good jobs and a good life there in the midst of the Roman Empire. But God's holy people and God's holy land are at the mercy of the great pagan empires. The dream of a land of rest was not realized. They all had hungry hearts. Now, Good Friday is the apocalypse of the hidden king. Jesus raised expectations that Israel's God might now finish the job. He did miracles. He did healing. He seemed to have so much promise, mercy and strength, power and kindness, but he doesn't seem to follow the expected script. He isn't destroying Israel's enemies. He isn't even raising an army. Then he goes down to Jerusalem. He's arrested and executed. That's not what's supposed to happen to Messiahs. Messiahs, like David, are supposed to deliver his people even through the blood of their enemies. This seems to be how all would-be Messiahs seem to die, unfulfilled. Everybody has a hungry heart. After Jesus was crucified, as evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting opposite the tomb. Their hungry hearts, in a sense, were waiting to penetrate that stone. The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell everyone that he's been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go, make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting a guard. After the Sabbath, the day of rest, at dawn on the 1st day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. Their hearts were still hungry, and they would not rest. They could not find rest. There was a violent earthquake. An angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, those of you who caught the Good Friday service know you have the directionality. It's coming from heaven down to earth, and another earthquake. And they rolled back the stone and sat on it. There you go, guards, your move. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes as white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, who apparently were able to talk, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has been risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." The angel seemed to have given a command, but it doesn't look like Jesus could wait. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." And that's how Matthew ends the story. This is the resurrection. Now, N.T. Wright, a biblical scholar, notes that these stories in the Gospels are unadorned. They're not embellished. You'd think that they would be sort of embroidered with all of this other stuff so that everyone would be sure to get the point. No, it seems like they are just the testimonies. Here it is. More stories and more stories will continue after that. You can read Mark and Luke and John. But C.S. Lewis makes a very important point about our curiosity for this moment. It's very important to be clear about what these people meant. When modern writers talk of the resurrection, they usually mean one particular moment, the discovery of the empty tomb and the appearance of Jesus a few yards away. The story of that moment is what Christian apologists now chiefly try to support and skeptics chiefly try to impugn. But this almost exclusive concentration on the first 5 minutes or so of the resurrection would have astonished the earliest Christian teachers. In claiming to have seen the resurrection, they're not necessarily claiming to have seen that. Notice, the angel comes down, rolls away the stone, sits on the stone. In Matthew, we don't have Jesus walking out of the tomb. In claiming to have seen the resurrection, they're not claiming to have seen that. Some of them had, some of them had not. It had no more importance than any of the other appearances of the risen Jesus. Their hearts are hungry, and they hunger for him. Apart from the poetic and dramatic importance which the beginning of things must always have, what they are claiming is that they had all, at one time or another, met Jesus during the 6 or 7 weeks that followed his death. Sometimes they seem to have been alone when they did so, but on one occasion 12 of them saw him together, and on another occasion about 500 of them. St. Paul says that the majority of the 500 were still alive when he wrote the first letter to the Corinthians, about 55 A.D. Now, some people are skeptical about whether or not it happened, and they have all sorts of mental ideas about what it is in that. Others might say, strange things happen, and what does that have to do with me? So what if he walked out of that tomb 2,000 years ago? People still die and stay dead. Strange things happen. But everyone still seems to have a hungry heart. They lay down their money and they play their part. Everybody's got a hungry heart. And the question is there any answer to humanity's hungry heart? Because Christians say, this is the answer. This is where it comes, which seems very strange in our quest for a spiritual home. The New Testament writers speak as if Christ's achievement in rising from the dead was the first event of its kind in the whole history of the universe. He is the first fruits, the pioneer of life. He has forced open a door that has been locked since the death of the first man. He has met, fought, and beaten the king of death. Everything is different because he has done so. This is the beginning of the new creation. A new chapter in cosmic history has opened. But people still die, don't they? But a powerful transition has been working its way slowly through history. And the reason I use Tom Holland's book Dominion is because that's a pretty good telling of the progress of that story. It's in fact so almost always around us, we are hardly able to see it. It takes a good historian to say, oh, look, the world has changed. What caused this? Who caused this? How did he cause this? Disciples of this Jesus began to live a new way. Because of Jesus' resurrection and his promise of our participation in it, they, with fits and starts, practiced his way of living. This is not something grave robbers do. And it begins to transform the world, and it's fueled by hope of the next. It's fueled by hope of us participating in a resurrection like his. So profound has been the impact of Christianity on the development of the Western civilization that it has come to be hidden from our view. It is the incomplete revolutions which are remembered. The fate of those which triumph is to be taken for granted. We don't see it. It's way too close. It's the air that we breathe. Jesus at once heightens our hunger. Before then, we look at the grave and say, well, that's just it. And our hunger becomes a feeding frenzy, a bucket list. Can I have enough experience? Can I find enough exciting things? Can I extend my youth as long as possible? Can I gain as much stuff so I can gain as much opportunity and experience? That kind of hungry heart does not satisfy. Jesus heightens our hunger for something that this world can't give, which is resurrection. And it makes us less satisfied with the junk food that bloats and weakens. Jesus, in fact, offers a community to travel with because this kind of hunger can't be sustained alone. It needs to happen in community. Home is never an individual thing. It's always about family. Jesus offers a way of life that is the shape of the cross, which seems strange. There are things in us that really must be put to death. And it offers renewal from the inside out. There are dead places in us that need to be healed. This Jesus offers a path that goes through the grave into the life that we were made for. Everybody has a hungry heart. The church is the place where the people on this path pursue Jesus and learn to walk with him. We stumble, we fail each other, but our master is a determined leader. He doesn't give up on us. Listen to your hungry heart and ask for better food, better traveling companions, and a better life than you will find in this world. Amen.